"Ma'am, I need to check your bag." The security guard's voice echoed through the upscale department store as he approached the well-dressed black woman near the jewelry counter. District Attorney Victoria Williams looked up in surprise, wondering why she was being singled out when dozens of other customers were shopping freely around her. But what the security guard didn't know was that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. It was a busy Saturday afternoon at Fifth Avenue Gallery, one of Manhattan's most prestigious department stores. The elegant establishment, located in the heart of New York's shopping district, catered to affluent customers who expected both luxury goods and exceptional service. The store's marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and well-dressed sales associates moved efficiently between displays of designer clothing, jewelry, and accessories. Victoria Williams had come to the store with a specific purpose: to find a special birthday gift for her 15-year-old daughter Maya, who had been asking for a particular designer handbag for months. As the district attorney for New York County, Victoria rarely had time for leisurely shopping, but Maya's birthday was important enough to warrant taking a few hours away from her demanding schedule. At 45 years old, Victoria was one of the most powerful prosecutors in the country. She had built her career on a foundation of excellence, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Her office handled some of the most high-profile criminal cases in New York, and her reputation for thorough preparation and courtroom skill had earned her respect throughout the legal community. Victoria had grown up in a middle-class family in Brooklyn, where her parents had instilled in her the importance of education and hard work. Her father was a public school principal, and her mother was a social worker, both of whom had faced their own struggles with discrimination while building their careers. They had taught Victoria that she would have to work twice as hard as her white colleagues to achieve the same level of success, a lesson that had proven unfortunately accurate throughout her professional life. After graduating from Harvard Law School, Victoria had joined the Manhattan District Attorney's office as an assistant prosecutor. She had quickly distinguished herself through her meticulous case preparation and her ability to connect with juries. Over the course of 20 years, she had worked her way up through the ranks, handling increasingly complex and important cases. Her appointment as district attorney 3 years earlier had been historic, making her the first black woman to hold the position in New York County. The appointment had come after a competitive selection process, and Victoria had been chosen based on her impressive track record and her vision for reforming the criminal justice system to make it more fair and effective. But despite her professional achievements and public recognition, Victoria still encountered situations where her race seemed to matter more than her qualification. She had learned to navigate these encounters with grace and professionalism, understanding that her responses would often be scrutinized more closely than those of her white counterparts. As Victoria browsed the handbag section of Fifth Avenue Gallery, she was unaware that she was being watched. Marcus Thompson, a 32-year-old security guard who had been working at the store for 5 years, had noticed her when she entered the designer section and had been observing her movements for the past 20 minutes. Marcus had developed what he considered a keen eye for identifying potential shoplifters, and something about Victoria's behavior had triggered his suspicions. She was examining expensive items closely, taking pictures with her phone, and speaking in what appeared to be hushed conversations on her cell phone. In Marcus's experience, these were all behaviors that could indicate someone who was planning to steal merchandise. What Marcus didn't realize was that Victoria was simply being a careful shopper. She was examining the handbags closely because she wanted to make sure she was choosing exactly the right one for her daughter. She was taking pictures to send to her sister, who had offered to help her choose between different styles, and her phone conversations were with her assistant, who was updating her on urgent matters that couldn't wait until Monday. But Marcus had made assumptions based on stereotypes rather than facts. In his mind, a young black woman shopping alone in an expensive store was inherently suspicious, especially if she seemed to be paying close attention to high-value items. He had been trained to watch for certain behaviors, but his training had been filtered through his own biases about who was likely to be a shoplifter. As Victoria continued shopping, Marcus positioned himself where he could maintain visual contact with her while remaining inconspicuous. He watched as she examined several different handbags, asked questions of the sales associate, and appeared to be making mental calculations about prices and features. What Marcus interpreted as suspicious behavior was actually Victoria going through the normal process of making an expensive purchase. As someone who had worked hard for her success, she didn't take luxury purchases lightly. She wanted to make sure that the bag she chose for Maya would be something her daughter would treasure for years to come. The situation escalated when Victoria moved to the jewelry section to look for matching accessories. Marcus followed at a distance, now convinced that she was planning to steal something. When Victoria asked to see several expensive necklaces and spent time examining them closely, Marcus decided it was time to intervene. "Ma'am, I need to check your bag," Marcus announced as he approached Victoria near the jewelry counter. His tone was authoritative and somewhat aggressive, and his words carried an implicit accusation that Victoria immediately recognized. Victoria looked up at Marcus, taking in his security uniform and the suspicious expression on his face. She had encountered racial profiling before, but she was still surprised to experience it so blatantly in such an upscale establishment. "I'm sorry," she asked, giving Marcus an opportunity to clarify his request. "Store policy requires that we check bags when customers have been shopping for extended periods in high-value sections," Marcus said, though this was not actually store policy. He was making up the rule on the spot to justify his actions. Victoria glanced around the store and noticed that she was the only customer being subjected to this supposed policy. Several other shoppers, including white women carrying large purses and shopping bags, were browsing freely without any security attention. The discriminatory nature of Marcus's request was obvious. "I see," Victoria said calmly. "And how many other customers have you asked to check their bags today using this policy?" Marcus was caught off guard by her question. He hadn't expected her to challenge his authority or to point out the inconsistency in his enforcement of the supposed rule. "Ma'am, I just need to check your bag," he repeated, his voice becoming more insistent. Victoria realized that she was facing a choice. She could comply with the discriminatory request and avoid a scene, or she could stand up for herself and risk escalating the situation. As a prosecutor who had built her career fighting injustice, she decided that she couldn't simply acquiesce to discriminatory treatment. "I understand that you're doing your job," Victoria said, maintaining her calm demeanor, "but I'm not going to submit to a bag search based on what appears to be selective enforcement of store policies. If this is truly a standard procedure, I'd like to speak with your manager." Marcus felt his authority being challenged, and his response was to become more aggressive. "Ma'am, if you refuse to cooperate, I'll have to ask you to leave the store." Victoria's professional training kicked in. She understood that this situation was escalating in a way that could become problematic for everyone involved. "That's your choice," she said calmly, "but I think you should know that I'm the district attorney for New York County, and I'm familiar with the laws regarding illegal detention and discrimination in places of public accommodation." Marcus stared at Victoria, trying to process what she had just told him. The idea that this woman could be a district attorney seemed impossible to him. In his mind, district attorneys were older white men in expensive suits, not young black women shopping alone on Saturday afternoon. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some identification if you're claiming to be a government official," Marcus said, still not believing Victoria's assertion. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out her official identification card, which clearly showed her name, title, and photograph. She handed it to Marcus, who examined it carefully, his expression changing from skepticism to shock, as he realized that she was telling the truth. The district attorney identification card was unmistakable, with official seals and security features that couldn't be faked. Marcus found himself holding proof that he had just attempted to illegally detain one of the most powerful prosecutors in the country based on nothing more than racial profiling. I'm sorry, Ms. Williams," Marcus stammered, suddenly understanding the magnitude of his mistake. "I didn't realize. I was just doing my job." Victoria took her identification back and put it away. "Marcus," she said, reading his name tag, "I understand that you thought you were doing your job, but what you were actually doing was racially profiling me. You singled me out for scrutiny that you didn't apply to other customers, and you made assumptions about my intentions based on my race." Marcus felt a wave of panic wash over him as he realized that his actions could cost him his job and potentially expose the store to legal liability. Miss Williams, I swear I wasn't thinking about race. I just thought your behavior seemed suspicious. What exactly about my behavior seemed suspicious? Victoria, I've been shopping normally, examining merchandise that I'm considering purchasing, and speaking with sales associates about products. The only thing that makes me different from other customers here is the color of my skin. The conversation had attracted the attention of other customers and store employees who were beginning to gather at a respectful distance to observe what was happening. Victoria was aware that the situation was becoming public, but she also recognized that this was an important teaching moment. Store manager Patricia Davis, a 40-year-old woman who had been with Fifth Avenue Gallery for 8 years, approached the scene after being alerted by another employee. Patricia immediately recognized that something serious was happening based on the tense body language of both Marcus and the customer. "Is there a problem here?" Patricia asked, directing her question to both Marcus and Victoria. "Your security guard has been following me around the store and has now demanded to search my bag based on what he claims is store policy," Victoria explained. "When I asked him about the selective enforcement of this policy, he threatened to have me removed from the store." Patricia felt her stomach drop as she realized the implications of what Victoria was describing. The store had strict policies against racial profiling, and employees received regular training on how to treat all customers with respect and dignity. Patricia began, hoping to get Victoria's name so she could address the situation properly. "District Attorney Victoria Williams," Victoria said, handing Patricia her business card. Patricia's face went pale as she read the card and understood exactly who was standing in front of her. She had just learned that her security guard had racially profiled the chief prosecutor for New York County, one of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the city. "Ms. Williams, I am deeply sorry for what has happened here today," Patricia said immediately. "This is absolutely not how we treat our customers, and Marcus's behavior does not reflect our store's values or policies." Victoria appreciated Patricia's immediate acknowledgement of the problem, but she also wanted to make sure that this incident led to meaningful change rather than just an apology. "Patricia, I appreciate your apology, but I'm more interested in understanding how this happened and what you're going to do to prevent it from happening again." Patricia nodded, understanding that this was a serious matter that required more than just damage control. "Would you be willing to speak with me privately about this incident? I want to understand exactly what happened and how we can address it." Victoria agreed, and Patricia led her to a private office behind the customer service counter. Marcus was instructed to wait in the break room while they talked, and Patricia made it clear that he should not discuss the incident with other employees until she had a chance to investigate fully. In the privacy of the office, Victoria described the entire incident in detail, from Marcus's initial surveillance to his demand to search her bag. She explained how his behavior had made her feel targeted and unwelcome, and she pointed out the clear pattern of discriminatory treatment. "Ms. Williams," Patricia said, "I want you to know that what happened today is completely unacceptable and does not represent our store's values. We have clear policies against racial profiling, and Marcus's behavior violated both our policies and the law." Victoria appreciated Patricia's response, but she wanted to understand the bigger picture. "Patricia, this didn't happen in a vacuum. Marcus felt comfortable approaching me in a way that he didn't approach other customers. That suggests that either your training isn't effective, or your policies aren't being enforced consistently." Patricia realized that Victoria was right. The fact that Marcus had felt confident enough to racially profile a customer suggested that there were systemic issues that needed to be addressed. "What would you recommend that we do to address this problem?" Victoria thought for a moment before responding. "First, Marcus needs to understand that his actions were wrong and why they were wrong. This isn't just about following store policy, it's about treating all people with dignity and respect. Second, you need to examine your training and hiring practices to make sure that all employees understand what racial profiling looks like and why it's harmful. Third, You need to implement accountability measures to ensure that this kind of incident doesn't happen again. Patricia took notes as Victoria spoke, recognizing that she was receiving valuable guidance from someone who had extensive experience dealing with discrimination and civil rights issues. Ms. Williams, would you be willing to help us develop better training programs? Your expertise would be invaluable in helping us create a more inclusive environment. Victoria was surprised by the request, but she recognized that it represented an opportunity to create positive change. I might be able to provide some guidance, but I think you should also work with civil rights organizations and diversity consultants who specialize in retail environment. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, with Victoria providing detailed recommendations for how the store could improve its policies and training. Patricia was impressed by Victoria's thoughtful and constructive approach to addressing the problem, and she committed to implementing the suggested changes. When they returned to the main floor, Patricia called Marcus into her office for a private conversation. She explained to him how his actions had violated store policy and had potentially exposed the company to legal liability. She also helped him understand how his unconscious biases had influenced his behavior and led him to treat Victoria differently than he would have treated a white customer. Marcus was shocked to learn about his own biases and genuinely apologetic about his behavior. He asked Patricia if he could apologize to Victoria personally, and she arranged for him to do so under her supervision. Williams, Marcus said when he met with Victoria again, "I want to apologize for my behavior today. I realize now that I made assumptions about you based on your race, and that was wrong. I'm going to work with our management to make sure this doesn't happen again." Victoria accepted Marcus's apology, but she also used the opportunity to help him understand the broader implications of his actions. "Marcus, I appreciate your apology, but I want you to understand that this isn't just about me. Every day, black customers face this kind of treatment in stores across the country. When you profile someone based on race, you're not just affecting that one person, you're perpetuating a system of discrimination that causes real harm." Marcus listened carefully to Victoria's words, and for the first time he began to understand how his actions fit into a larger pattern of racial discrimination. "Ms. Williams, what can I do to make sure I don't make this mistake again?" Victoria spent several minutes talking with Marcus about unconscious bias, explaining how stereotypes can influence behavior even when people don't intend to discriminate. She encouraged him to examine his own assumptions and to treat every customer with the same level of respect and professionalism. The incident at Fifth Avenue Gallery became a turning point for the store's approach to customer service and diversity training. Patricia worked with Victoria and several civil rights organizations to develop new training programs that helped employees recognize and address their unconscious bias. The store also implemented new policies and procedures designed to prevent racial profiling, including regular monitoring of security interactions and customer feedback systems that allowed shoppers to report discriminatory treatment. For Victoria, the incident served as a reminder that even someone in her position of power and authority was not immune to racial discrimination. But she was pleased that her experience had led to positive changes that would benefit other customers in the future. Marcus underwent extensive diversity training and eventually became one of the store's most effective advocates for inclusive customer service. He often shared his story with new employees as an example of how unconscious bias can lead to discriminatory behavior and how important it is to treat every customer with respect. The story of Victoria's experience at Fifth Avenue Gallery eventually became a case study used in diversity training programs across the retail industry. It demonstrated how racial profiling could affect anyone, regardless of their status or position, and how important it was for businesses to create inclusive environments for all customers. Victoria never did buy the handbag for her daughter that day, but she found something more valuable, an opportunity to create positive change and to help others understand the importance of treating all people with dignity and respect. Maya ended up choosing a different gift, but she was proud of her mother for standing up for herself and for using the experience to help others. Years later, when people asked Victoria about the incident, she would always emphasize that it wasn't about her personal feelings being hurt, but about the broader impact of discriminatory treatment on communities and individuals. When we allow racial profiling to continue unchallenged, she would say, we're sending a message that some people are less worthy of respect than others. That's not the kind of society we want to live in. The security guard who had followed the district attorney around the store had learned that day that assumptions based on race are not only wrong, but can have serious consequences for everyone involved. Victoria Williams had used her experience to create positive change, turning a moment of discrimination into an opportunity for education and growth.